Hello and good evening. I'm Gerry Anderson. Thanks for joining us on this Friday evening. I'm sure you've got lots of other things you could be doing, but instead you've joined us to talk about Joe 90. I'm not going to pass any judgment there, but especially because our important guests this evening are the men of the hour, the authors of our upcoming Joe 90 technical manual. Before I bring them in, please do tell us where you're watching from. And also let us know if you've managed to get a hold of or secure yourself a copy, I should say, of the Joe 90 Project 90 Technical Operations Manual. We'll be answering your questions. And if you've got anything you want to ask about the book, what's in it, what's not in it, possibly, when it's out, any other bits and pieces, we'll be happy to answer your questions. But for now, let me introduce the two authors of the Joe 90 Technical Operations Manual, Chris and Jack.
Hello.
There they are.
Hello there. Hello.
Hello, gents. While we get going, do you want to just introduce yourselves for those who don't know you? I mean, I'm sure most of our viewers this evening will know exactly who you are, but in case they don't, who are you and who are you to the worlds of Anderson in general? Chris?
Hello. My name is Chris Thompson. I am Anderson Entertainment's most average agent. And I am the writer and illustrator, one of the writers and an illustrator on the Joe 90 Project 90 Technical Operations Manual.
Very nice. And
Very
Jack?
nice. See if I can match that. Hello, I am Jack, also known as Jack 90. And I am also, co-writing the Joe 90 Project 90 Technical Operations Manual. You might have seen me around the internet as Security Hazard. I have a blog about all things Gerry Anderson, where I like to analyze things in absurd amounts of detail. And you may have also heard me as the voice of Agent 21 in the lovely motion comic that Mr. Chris Thompson also worked on. And you can also find me all over the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel in various different places and on the website as well. So yeah, I just like to creep in wherever I can. Creep is the wrong word, but you know.
You're not creeping and sneaking. You're always welcome, Jack. So don't
Yes.
don't downplay your involvement. So I'm sure there are some people who are joining us this evening who've already got their pre-order in. In fact, I can see, there we go, Jeffrey Page has already got his in. And I'm sure I saw somebody else earlier on who said they did too. Steve is already asking who's got their pre-order in. The special edition is now sold out, so we won't be mentioning that too much because we don't want to upset anyone because they missed out. Sorry if you did. But Chris, why don't you just briefly talk us through the manual, what it is, what's come before, and why we're doing it, especially when I'm not Joe's biggest fan.
So the Project 90 Technical Operations Manual is, like, in universe, it's a book that kind of collects everything about Project 90 and puts it into like one simple book. I think I framed it mostly around if anything happens to Shane Weston or Sam Louver specifically, this is like the handover document. And that way we get to cover things like the big rats, the characters, the sort of the global situation to some degree, a list of approved vehicles, and then Jack's section, which we're going to talk about in a minute, which is like a case study section. Why we're doing it is we've already done Space 1999 and UFO. Those went down astronomically well, I would say. Caught us a bit by surprise, if I'm going to be honest. And this time around, we had a bit of a gap in the schedule, and we figured let's try experimenting with some of the shows that don't get quite as much attention. And I think it's fair to say that Joe 90 probably gets about 5 to 10% of the attention that the more popular shows get. And from the results we've seen today, it's very nicely punching above its weight, I'd say. Yes. And also personally, I love this show. I produced the documentary that's recently gone up to YouTube back in 2018 for Network for the Blu-ray set. And when I kind of went back to the show, I sort of realized it was very good. It really surprised me because I hadn't really touched Joe 90 since I was a kid. with the occasional exception. And yeah, I was very impressed with how concise it was, how good the world building was, how good the characters were specifically, because we may disagree on Joe, but the other three are really well done. And yeah, it's nice to be able to basically shine a light on one of the less covered parts of the Gerry Anderson universe.
Gosh, is Joe paying you or something for you to say all these nice things? I mean, yeah, seems a bit over the top. Okay, Chris. Well, that's. I mean, we didn't want to just restrict the technical manuals to the live action world, and we talked about doing Super Mario Nation stuff for a while. And I think the tradition seems to be in the licensing, publishing, and product world to go, oh, let's start with the big popular one, and then kind of forget about the rest. And we sort of wanted to turn it on its head.
Yeah.
We'll get to like Thunderbird and Scarlet, but first need to eat your vegetables.
I was just going to say that's what's happened with Joe 90 in the past. Like in a lot of cases, it's been Thunderbird, Stingray, Captain Scarlet, Joe 90. Oh, now we're running out of puff. So it's nice that we've turned it on its head a little bit, and putting Joe front and center as one of the earliest.
Yes, indeed. Well, speaking of putting Joe front and center, Jack, for those of you who are watching now, you're in with an amazing chance to win a lovely prize direct from my office to your home, potentially. I don't know if you will have known, viewers, but Joe sent me a birthday card foretelling of the release of this book and calling me a big rat. And I've also got my still cellophane wrapped copy of the DVD here. We will be sending these to our favorite commenter this evening. Favorite comment doesn't necessarily mean you being nicer than everybody else. It could be an interesting comment, an interesting question, or just something that makes us smile. So please do comment and ask us your questions. And to our favorite, you will be rewarded with these items. So there you go. Jack, before we start answering anybody's questions, why do you think Joe 90 is more deserving of praise than he generally gets?
Oh, that's a big question, but I would say the big selling point of it really is that at that time, Joe 90 was kind of Century 21 at the top of its game in terms of the production values of the show. It looks fantastic. They just really knew how to film these puppets and make them look good. The special effects are some of the best that Century 21 and AP Films ever produced. We've often talked about how, Joe 90 doesn't have quite so many vehicles. I actually don't think that's true. Like, as we'll prove in the manual, there's a lot of fantastic vehicle design that's going into there, which is both kind of outlandish in the way that things like Stingray and Thunderbirds were, but also sophisticated in the way that Mike Trim sort of started to introduce into the vehicle designs as he kind of took over from Derek Meddings on the vehicle design front. So yeah, it's just it's a top quality piece of Super Mario Nation filmmaking, and you can just see the culmination of everything that Century 21 have been working towards for the past, what are we talking about at that point, 8 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in many ways, it is the sort of superlative Super Mario Nation experience, in your view, Jack, certainly from a technical point of view, if not from all the characters' point of view, from some of the viewers' point of view.
I think in terms of particularly what Gerry wanted to get out of Super Mario Nation, which was realism above all else, that's what you get with the look of Joe 90, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, to add to that, not only are like the special effects on par, one thing that's always struck me about Joe 90 is the direction of the show. It's definitely a step above what they were doing on Captain Scarlet, and they're trying a whole pile of new interesting things with the puppets. And even there's a bit in one of the early episodes where like Professor McClane puts his glasses on, and it's like seamless, like it's cut between two shots, but like you don't question it. And it's really small things like that I think really add to the show in many ways.
Okay, well, we can tell you two are about to found a Joe 90 fan club, and I'm sure you've fallen even more in love with the show along the way. Peach asks, did you discover anything that really surprised you about Joe 90 while creating the tech manual? Chris, do you want
Honestly, it's the level of detail that was already there. I've alluded to this on previous live streams, but you sort of, with a lot of the shows, there'll be like a series Bible, and there'll be like a couple of, you can look in like the annuals and things, and there'll be character bios here and there. But for Joe 90, not only did they have miles of like character biographies, but they also have a very comprehensive history of WIN. They have this whole overview of what the rest of the network looks like. It goes so far as to, there's we've not really done much with it in the book, but there is like Shane Weston Aquacar and things like that as well. So yeah, it's just having all that lore at our already at our fingertips was quite exciting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Jack?
along similar lines, yes, just the sheer amount of material that was already there, which actually hadn't necessarily been fully explored, even in the series. You know, this was material that was prepared by Tony Barwick and Shane Rimmer, who are writing the series. And, you know, for example, just one small thing is Professor McLean has a love for ballooning, which is explored in one episode, in the episode Project 90, and then never mentioned again. But if you go back and read the biographies, which, you know, will be a part of this manual, ballooning is actually a pretty big part of Professor McLean's life, and you know, he's actually quite a daring adventurer who's gone on all these expeditions across the globe. Not talked about in the series, but something that was intended by the writers. So yeah, definitely something that we were keen to draw upon when we were putting this together. Yeah.
Okay. So
Also, another thing is so much hidden Lego. Going through any of the other shows, like you don't see obvious Lego bricks on things, but for some reason, as soon as you hit Joe 90, everything's got like a few bits and pieces of Lego bits on it, and suddenly, I don't know, my entire world was shattered for a moment.
So that substantial detail is one of the main kind of findings, including Lego pieces. Very good. I have a quick fire question for you in that case from Ross Patterson. A favorite Joe 90 episode with its best explosion in?
2 words: Mario Coletti.
I knew it'd be Coletti. Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna be a bit cheeky and say the missile base explosion from the first episode, but with the knowledge that was being filmed at the same time as Thunderbird 6, so it's kind of the same explosion that appears in Thunderbird 6, but I mean it looks fantastic.
It's the same explosion, but 1 foot to the left.
Yeah, exactly. Literally had 2 cameras on it just to make sure they could get it for both formats. So
we can't waste those explosions.
Yeah.
Well, we'll dive back into questions shortly because there are a few coming through, but we've got some more pages from the book to show off, and I believe that some of these go into Jack's area, so to speak. Is that right? I mean, Chris, do you just want to just take us through the pages that we've already seen in quick fire fashion?
No,
and then we'll move over to the new ones. So,
give
us the format rundown.
So, people familiar with the previous manuals, we like to cover the technology, vehicles, characters, and things like that. In this instance, like this is both the case that we start off with, and you can see where the secret compartments are. You can see what it's supposed to be disguised as. I've put a little bit of extra bits of details in there, like there's an armor resistant plate in the middle of it, so it could be used as like a shield. We'd also talk a bit about you see other WIN cases in the episodes and how it differs to those and things like that. If we move over onto the next one, we have the U-59 Wildcat as named from the IMI toy. Yes, this is one of the fan favorite guest vehicles. Joe 90 only had 2 key vehicles, but in pretty much every episode, they had a hero quality guest vehicle turn up. And this was the one for Colonel McLean. And like before, we've got schematics, we've got renders, I've written a little bit of a background to the vehicle, and Amazing 15 have produced this rather slightly more older kind of fashion style to the design of the book. So we've got things on physical paper. When we get to Jack's, I'll talk about this a bit more when we get to Jack's section, but there is an element of I wanted this book to look a little bit more thrown together than the other ones.
Well, in that case, would you like some of the pages? There's the page with the orange bit on it or the one without. Either preference for you, Chris?
The orange bit, please.
There you go. There's the one.
So, Jack, over to you.
Yes. So one of my primary responsibilities for this book was a section on case studies. So specific files that WIN would have in their records about the missions that Joe was undertaking. Based on the episodes that we see in the television series, as well as a couple of new files that we are creating ourselves as well. So what you get from these sections is a kind of summary of the mission, and then insights into the brain patterns that are being used, the people whose special skills are being adopted by Joe to undertake the mission. You also get insight into any of the guest vehicles that happen to appear in that episode, as well as diagrams and information about some of the locations, some of the strategic planning that goes into some of these missions. And one of my kind of favorite things to work on about this was the criminal files. And we can see here from the episode, The Professional General Heppel. It was really interesting to kind of, because a lot of this stuff isn't present in the episodes, I wanted to kind of dig into these hardened criminal characters and try to imagine a little bit of their backstory and what brought them into this kind of shady underworld. And had a lot of fun coming up with ideas about, well, where did Mario Coletti kind of start his career as a gun runner and all this kind of thing. So yeah, it was really good fun to put that together. And yeah, as Chris said, we want it to kind of have that feel of, this is a file that WIN has available and is usually kept confidential, but on this particular occasion, Sam Luver has agreed to let us take a look at them. So yeah.
One of the things, particularly in like older books, you'll see almost episode guides explaining what happened in the shows, and that was obviously from a time before you could just watch the things on BritBox at like a moment's notice. So I feel like I really, really like what Jack's done here, because I really appreciate it. Does somewhat cover what happens in the story, but then it means that you can go back, watch the episode again with the added context that Jack's given you. And I think personally that's one of the coolest things about the manual for me.
Well, that's very nice of you to say.
Rewatching it through a Jack Knoll shaped lens. There you go. That might change your experience forever. Chris, I've also got a preview page of Joe's gun here. Do we want to just touch on that briefly? It's nice. It's cool.
One of the challenges when it comes to doing a book on Joe 90 is trying to explain how the gun can fire, I think it's 200 to 500 times without reloading.
Yeah.
Despite the fact it's supposed to be half the size of a normal gun. I've come up with a workaround solution. As part of the lore in the annuals, it does say that the gun is designed by Shane Western, which is quite interesting. And another problem I had is that if you look at Joe's case, there's two ammo clips in the front that don't match the gun. So I've kind of made them into sort of carry cases for ammo clips, and because obviously there's like about 200 bullets in there that you don't want to fall out. But it was quite fun taking what was like a really simple prop and having it been able to like deconstruct it, like in that photo with the red background there. Kind of like a normal gun would be. So it was quite fun, and I got to play around with like electromagnetic like firing systems and that kind of thing, and explain how Joe can still be a decent shot without his glasses on and stuff. That was all quite fun to work around.
Yeah, that's one of the fun things about this project, has just been problem solving, kind of looking at some of the inconsistencies that might be there in the series and trying to figure out how can we put this all together in a way that kind of makes logical sense. And that's something that Chris is especially good at, is just trying to rationalize some of the stuff that maybe doesn't quite tie together if you think about it too hard.
We could be sitting around trying to cure cancer, or we could try and work this stuff out.
You'd rather be the king of retrofitted logic instead. Why not?
Yeah.
It's very important. So I think that's very smart. Willow has questions galore. Favorite part of the writing process? Was it the research, getting to fill the gaps, getting to know the characters better, or something else entirely? I mean, I feel like I know what you're going to say because you keep saying it, but is there something else here, or is it really this kind of digging into the detail that was always there but was never explored?
It's a bit of both. Like filling in the gaps is exceptionally fun. Any of the old manuals I'd get, like the best thing about the original Star Trek: The Next Generation manual was finding out that there's dolphins on the Enterprise in cetacean ops. One of the things I loved about the old Graham Bluthman books is like how like Thunderbird 1 has this deployable cargo bay underneath it, kind of like a pod. It's those kind of things which you don't see in the show, but are like, it's really exciting to see. And I think it's one of the things that people have kind of come back to us and said the new stuff is kind of what excites people quite a bit. And to be honest, there's not that much new stuff in Joe 90 because it was so well rounded at the time. But there's a little bit, and particularly those two new stories at the end will be quite different, hopefully. Jack?
Yeah. Again, pretty much summing it up by saying that, yes, it was filling in those details, filling in the gaps where we found them. As I say, getting to imagine character biographies for characters that we only see in one episode and trying to kind of think up, the criminal backstory and all of that. And it just helped to, build the world, make it feel real. That's one of the kind of treats of Joe 90 is because there's some debate over what year exactly it takes place in, but because it's a little bit closer to the 1960s when it was being made, at least, it feels much more like a kind of real world that's being inhabited. And just, you can see in the series that all the details about how this world operates are fully fleshed out, and getting to dig into that in particular was great fun. Yeah.
Very nice. There you go. Well, hopefully that answers your question nicely. I have a logistical question here from Steve. What's the ETA for the manual? Steve, right now, we hope that it'll be printed by the end of June. With a fair wind, it might even be arriving by the end of June, but I'm going to say the first week of July. So it's actually not that long, bear in mind tomorrow is the 1st of April. So yes, it isn't too far away. Obviously, very serious question from Carlo here. Did I wear glasses as a 9-year-old? No, not until I was 11, Carlo. Very crucial. Steve, whose brain pattern would you like? I mean, you can restrict this to the world of Joe 90 or Super Mario Nation if you like, or you can go into the real world. This could reveal something, well, deep and personal, so be careful how you answer, Chris and Jack. I'm padding to give you a few moments to think, but now, Chris, whose brain pattern do you want?
Weirdly enough, my brain immediately went to Jeff Goldblum because I imagine that guy has some stories, but probably something useful, like, I don't know, the President of the United States, like any of them would probably have some good banter. Yeah,
potentially.
Yeah, Jack, over to you.
I've always wanted to drive a train, so I'll be a train driver. Why not?
Literally any train driver.
Any train driver. Yeah, just sure, why not?
But
that's kind of the appeal of Joe 90 is that as a kid, it's the idea you could do anything you want to do. And, that would be my, if I was 9 years old, which I, basically mentally that's where I'm at. I would pick being a train driver.
Okay, Jack. I love that we have gone from the leader of the free world to train driver. That's great. The whole thing. I mean, that's the freedom of the big rat, right?
So correct. Yeah.
And it was interesting. That was one of the other. So everyone, when they talk about Joe 90, they immediately jump on the ethical quandaries of giving a 9-year-old all these things. But one of the things that actually it was interesting trying to deal with in the book was the ethical quandaries of scanning someone without their consent and just having their brain pattern.
Yeah.
And sort of, just be able to just like use their skills and things like that without their permission. So that was quite interesting to sort of try and work my way around.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a kind of law and ethics heavy tome, though. This is
no. Like I kind of deal with it in the first page, and then we just don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. We just kind of briefly touch upon those things to kind of make logical sense, and then kind of focus on the tech.
Smart thinking. Okay, I have a very specific technical question. Do we know how fast and what horsepower or engine size Mac's jet car was?
So it's got different speeds for whatever it's traveling at. I can remember because I've finished that thing not too long ago. Sam's car is 200 miles per hour. Mac's car, I think, on land is about the same. On the water, it's about 70 knots, which is significantly slower. And that is actually something. Pardon? Yeah, it's quick enough for a boat. That is another thing I've been able to do is show what it looks like when it's sailing on the water, because you never see that in the show. I can't remember offhandedly what it does on land, but I think it's again 200 miles or in the air. Sorry, it's I think it's about 300 to 400 or whatever. Yeah. Like it's fast, much faster for the flying brick kind of design that it has.
I mean, at the end of the day, McLean and Joe live down in Dorset, and WIN is based in London, so they're able to get there.
3-hour, 50-minute drive. I Google it.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. You see, this is the depth of research that's being done for this book. Just before we head into our final few minutes, I'm going to remind you, viewers and commenters, that you could win this amazing prize of the birthday card that Joe sent me and my still cellophane wrapped Joe 90 DVD. That's going to our favorite comment from the evening. So if you've got a comment or question you want to get in the last few minutes, then, well, you should probably do that kind of now. Chris and Jack, is there anything that isn't going to make it into the book that you wish we had the time or capability to put in? Sort of anything that was on your wish list, or is this a book of dreams come true?
There's a few extraneous things that we haven't put in, like there wasn't really a reason, like we only had a couple of slots for the case studies, so we're not really doing, say for instance, the hovercraft from Trial at Sea. Trying to remember what else we're not, because it's everything else is pretty much in there. Like, and heli jets and things like that. The things that like aren't that sort of notable in the show, we don't really do. But other stuff, like you can see, I've got the VG-104 behind me. We've got the F-116. We've got for Jack's section, we do cover like a lot of the more guest vehicles. So we've got the submarine from Big Fish. You saw the two variations of spiders there. So we are going to, like, most things get some sort of mention in some way or regard.
Yeah. That was it would have been great to be able to do mission files on every episode, of course. But we kind of had to go through a selection process of what's going to provide the most variety and what are stories that particularly interest us. I know Chris is a big fan of The Professional. My favorite episode for some reason is Business Holiday. So we've gone for that as well. So what you should see in there though is a kind of good selection of the different kinds of missions that Joe went on. And yes, it's a shame we couldn't do all of them, but that would be a much, much thicker, heavier book that would need a reinforced bookshelf for. So
okay, maybe
just being practical.
A future expanded technical manual, maybe. Let's see. Okay, I've got maybe this is a serious question. I don't know, but it made me smile regardless. Rob Hawke says, "Is there any truth to the rumor that the big rat was originally invented to correct Joe's behavioural problems, like starting fires at school, but was later found to have greater use? So was this a thing to stop Joe being a very naughty boy?"
It's like,
I'm trying to think. We do know from from the original writer's guide that Joe, academically speaking, he was not academically inclined at school. He was more interested in sports and outdoor activities. So, by that logic, one might assume that Joe liked to cause trouble at school, maybe. I mean, I think it's fair. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. We don't have things like a school report in the manual. No, we don't. So anyone who wanted to know how well Joe was doing in maths and things like that, sorry, that's not in there. But there is, however, a full exploration into how the big rat came to be, what it was invented for, what inspired Professor McLean in the first place to work on it, etc., etc. So I hope that kind of answers the question without answering the question.
No, I think that's an expertly not answered answer. Really, spot on, and quite an interesting thought too. I'm going to squeeze in a couple more because people are asking them, so why not? In fact, obviously, last minute flurry of people clearly wanting to win this exciting prize. George, what other Gerry Anderson show do you think Joe would have liked to watch? Jack's going to say The Investigator, I guarantee.
Yep. Yep. Joe would have totally been into The Investigator.
I'm going to say Supercar because, weirdly enough, because it turns up in both Fireball and Stingray as like a show or some like it's some sort of franchise or brand in those shows, I like to think it's canon that Supercar is somewhat the same in all the shows. And I have written it in that there was a throwaway line in there about the inspiration for the jet car, which is also a vehicle that can travel online and roam the skies through the heaven stormy rays. Nice. Yeah, so I'm going to say Supercar.
It's just occurred to me that there is one obvious answer, and it's Four Feather Falls. Because we know that Joe likes watching westerns, as we saw in the Western episode. So yeah, Four Feather Falls definitely would be up there.
The contractually mandated Western episode.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Okay, well, I'm saying Space Precinct because 9-year-old kids want to escape to alien cops fantasy land rather than Western.
Escapism for Joe is probably just like watching Emmerdale or something, or like
probably.
Please just let me be a boy, Dad.
Chris, can you tick off the question from Tom here? What vehicles are in it? What any in his list in this tech manual?
So the rocket from Most Special Astronaut is, the submarine from Arctic Adventure is, the passenger line from Splashdown is, the OGT and the U-85 are, the MiG-242 is made up. We do touch upon it, but they do very much specifically say it does not exist.
Okay, well, there you go, Tom. So all of your wishes except for the made-up one, but, we can't have everything made up. The made up things can't make it in. Next manual, the Secret Service. No, absolutely not. I'm putting my foot down right there. That is not happening. Gents, I think we've got to choose our winner, really. Do you have anyone in particular, any questions that have stimulated you or been unexpected or made you smile?
Just scrolling up through the comments now.
Ooh, drum roll.
I have to say,
Retro Romans wants to make a Joe 90 game. When are the models using the
Go on, Jack. I feel like you're leaning towards the winner.
I'm leaning towards the idea of Joe being a fire starter.
A very naughty boy. We're talking Rob Hawke here.
He could be. I'm not saying that's for sure, but it's an interesting bit of speculation.
I thought it was a really good question. So, Chris, unless you're opposed, I mean, even if you are 2 against 1, so
yeah, no, I think it's fair enough. It's an interesting question.
Okay, so Rob Hawke, you with your question and your thumb up right there. You are the winner of my unopened Joe 90 DVD and birthday card from Joe 90. So please email support@gerryanderson.com. And let them know that you are the winner, and we'll get it sent out to you shortly. I did notice somebody there saying, "How do I win the prize? I'm late to the party." Well, I'm really sorry, Don. The prize has been and gone. It was by asking a great question, and I'm afraid yours didn't quite pass muster there. So there we go. Thanks, everybody, for watching and for your questions. really appreciate all of them. And Chris and Jack, for all of your absolutely tremendous efforts on this book, which I'm sure will turn even the most hardened anti-Joe 90 person into a fan. Maybe. We shall see.
Well, I certainly hope so.
I think
people do want to be converted to Joe 90, where do they go to get a hold of this magnificent book?
What an amazing question, Jack. Why would you plug a book that when we're talking about it? If you look at the very bottom of the screen, there's a ticker there with Ander.Dotson/Project 90. The special edition is sold out. I'm afraid sold out in the first couple of hours this morning. But if you want to get the standard edition, you can get it for £27.99, which is £2 less than it will be in a week's time. So there's a little pre-order bargain there for you. Or just go to the Gerry Anderson store and search for Joe 90, and you'll see its beautiful cover in the search results. So there you go. There we have it. All happy? Any further things you'd like to say, gents, before we let everyone get on with their evening? Well,
and also be sure to check out the Security Hazard blog to find out the lyrics to the Joe 90 theme tune.
Well, talking of Four Feather Falls, today I've just published an article about some of the villainous characters that are in that series. So once you've picked up your copy of the Joe 90 manual, head over to securityhazard.net and enjoy some Gerry Anderson related blog content. So yeah, there we go. Amazing. There's my plug. Thank you very much, Chris. No, I just also want to add, it's been fantastic to see the amount of love that is out there for Joe 90, as much as Jamie wouldn't like to admit it. There is a lot of love out there.
Very
for Joe,
happy,
and we're pleased to see it. So thank you everyone for just putting your support out there. It's been great to see.
I think we did touch upon this in the last live stream, but there is going to be another manual this year. We'll tell you more about it eventually.
Yes, later in the year. Yeah, second TAC manual on the way, and many more beyond, I hope, because it's a lovely range, and everybody seems to love them. So, thanks for voting with your feet, clicks, and wallets, because it means we can do more of these things, and that just kind of adds to more Gerry Anderson love in the world. So, thank you all for all that. Chris and Jack and all of our viewers, thank you so much. We'll say goodnight, and now my dogs are barking, so I better go and attend to them. So, goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.